So it's going to be 6 months very soon, next week, in fact, 6 months since Donald Trump assumed the presidency for his second term. It's been a roller coaster, to say the least. And somehow this week, it's really sort of come to the fore. The one issue that seems to be certainly tearing up his base seems to be one of the most unlikely ones. It's not about Iran, it's not about Russia or Ukraine, it's not about India, Pakistan, it's not even about the trade stuff. It is about what started off as a far-right conspiracy on the Jeffrey Epstein files. Now his base feels like he cheated them because earlier, a few days ago, there was this memo that came out saying that they're not going to release more on the Epstein files, and there isn't much more to release in the Epstein files. But this seems to be the issue that is splitting MAGA up. Let's try and get an assessment of what the last 6 months have been for American domestic policy, foreign policy, vis-a-vis India as well, and of course a whole bunch of things to talk about in the wider region, whether it is Israel, Iran, whether it is Russia, Ukraine. I'm now joined by a very special guest. Mr. Edward Luce is the national editor, the U.S. national editor of the Financial Times. Thank you very much, Mr. Luce, for speaking with us. So this whole, brouhaha, this controversy that's been going around the Epstein files, certainly in Trump-verse, in MAGA-verse. What do you make of it? I mean, why do you think it's become such a potent issue in the base? So much so that Trump has had to sort of talk about it every single day this week, trying to play it down, and may I say, unsuccessfully.
Yes, very unsuccessfully. I mean, this is turning into something of a populist truth test for Donald Trump, because he and, sort of key MAGA influencers have for years been saying this is really the most important cover-up and conspiracy theory in American politics, that this notorious super rich party goer, Jeffrey Epstein, who'd been convicted previously of having sex and trafficking with underage girls, so essentially pedophilia, and he'd served jail time for it, that there was a cover-up. And of course, this guy, Epstein, he took his life. Some people don't believe he committed suicide, but he took his life in jail, in prison, in Trump's first term. And the whole sort of issue's been building up during the Biden administration, that Biden's been covering up the Epstein files, the client list. And so for them now to sort of have marched the MAGA base to the top of the hill, only to say, right, let's march down to the bottom again, is causing immense frustration. And I think, Trump, there's a Chinese proverb, if you ride the tiger, it's hard to get off. And Trump's finding it very hard to get off this tiger, that people do not believe that there is nothing there.
But has it got to the point where some people in his base, and certainly some people who he's had a fallout with, Elon Musk in this case, are suggesting the real reason why the Epstein files are not being released is because Trump's name figures in it? You think it's got to that point? A lot of his base has started believing that that's why he's not releasing the files?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of the rest of America believes that. So you've got this sort of weird, unholy alliance between liberals who are saying open the files because they think Trump, will be incriminated by them. But then you've got the far right doubling down and saying release the files because they think lots of liberal, big name establishment liberals are in there. So there's a weird sort of convergence of interest with different outcomes in mind. And it's very hard to see how Trump sort of wriggles out of this one, because he's promised for so long to open these files, and to say that they're not there, and to keep telling people, as he does pretty much daily now, to move on and focus on something else, that kind of guarantees they're not going to. So I don't know how Trump wriggles out of this.
I did reference Musk earlier on, and what do you make of this whole public fallout between the world's richest man and arguably the world's most powerful man? Do you think that bridge, that friendship is completely collapsed now? There's no coming back from here on?
Yeah, well, so when they were initially falling out, I think Elon Musk passed the point of no return by saying that Trump is in the Epstein files, and that's why they're not being released. I mean, to accuse somebody essentially of sexual abuse, it's pretty hard to repair friendships after that. And Musk just this week. I mean, he had a spree of about 13 postings saying, if Trump is calling this a hoax, how come Epstein committed suicide and his longtime sort of hostess aide, Ghislaine Maxwell, is serving 20 years in prison? Was that all a hoax too? So this is becoming, I mean, a really sort of visceral, jugular kind of enmity, really, between Musk and Trump. And so you've got that side of MAGA too, the plutocratic side being Musk, and then of course the blue collar side saying we want these files released. Trump is not in a good place.
The other U-turn that he did, it also sort of came to pass this week, was the decision to send missiles, Patriot missiles to Ukraine, give more weapons to Ukraine, although he did add the caveat that it's not the United States that's going to pay for it, it's going to be European countries that are going to pay for it. And many are saying, you know, this is again Trump going the Biden way by arming Ukraine. Is that a valid criticism? And do you see the result of what you're seeing on the battlefield change as a result of this decision?
Yeah, this is, I think, the sort of biggest U-turn of Trump's first 6 months. Most of the other things that have been happening, the trade war, Liberation Day, his sort of backing of Israel, the war with courts and the rule of law, the attack on universities, all of these things are predictable and they have happened as you would expect them to happen. On Ukraine, though, I think he's had what Barack Obama used to call a teachable moment. Trump thought that he could fix the Russia-Ukraine war in 24 hours. Then he pushed it back to 100 days. But each time he called Putin, and they have long calls, tried to persuade Putin to agree to a ceasefire, the following sort of 24 hours, Russia would actually step up its drone and missile attacks on Ukraine. And this became pretty humiliating for Trump, in spite of the fact he really does bend over backwards to get along with Putin and express admiration for him. Putin doesn't seem to reciprocate. And so this U-turn, I think, is born of frustration that Trump's art of the deal just isn't anywhere close to working with Ukraine, but also born of some success, which is his NATO summit, the NATO summit recently. He did get America's European partners to agree to lift defense spending to 5%. And so he thought, well, look, if you're going to buy these weapons from us, sure, you can give them to Ukraine. You're going to spend money. I've been asking you to spend money. You've agreed to spend money. Okay, go ahead, buy Patriot missiles, buy artillery pieces, buy 155 millimeter shells, whatever it is that Ukraine wants delivered. And so for the time being, we have a sort of Biden-esque position here from Trump, not something people anticipated.
How is it playing out, though, with Russia, with Putin? I think the Kremlin put out a statement saying, you know, we don't respond to deadlines, we don't respond to ultimatums, and so on. So all of this threat of, 100% tariffs in 50 days if there's no ceasefire, the sending of these additional weapons to Ukraine. Do you think it's going to result in a ceasefire on the ground, or is Putin just going to continue doing what he's been doing over these last few years?
Yeah, 24 hours initially, then 100 days, and now there's this 50-day deadline, which of course is relevant to India because the threat that Trump would impose direct tariffs on Russia, 100% tariffs on Russia, was accompanied by the promise of the threat of secondary sanctions on countries that buy oil and other goods from Russia, of a really steep 200, 300% tariffs. If that does come to pass, and I doubt it will, then you're going to see some real tension in India-America relations. But I don't think it will come to pass. I think Trump will find some kind of an off-ramp.
I do want to talk about India-US, firstly on the trade part, because India is one of the few countries that's escaped the tariffs for now. And in fact, I think it was either yesterday or the day before when he announced the Indonesia deal, he said India will be next. We don't quite know what the contours are, but you reckon there will be an India-US trade deal in whatever form or shape?
Yes, although I wouldn't use the word deal. Deal, normally means detailed, worked out, substantive agreements. And, there's been 3 so far: UK, Vietnam, Indonesia, plus this sort of truce with China. Um, but if you look at the content of the UK one, it's really, there's a lot of placeholder sort of blanks. It's kind of a kabuki deal. And you never really know how long these deals are going to last with Trump. That being said, though, there was, you're right, an Indonesia deal in which Trump got major concessions. He kept 19% tariffs on India and got on Indonesia and received 0% tariff access for American goods going into Indonesia. That looks pretty good optically for Trump, and not particularly good for Indonesia. But what the Indonesians have done, and I think everybody is doing this, including India, is how do we pacify, for the time being, this sort of force of nature? How do we bring fruits to the volcano? So that we can buy time to do much more serious, substantive, real deals with other trading partners. I suspect India is under a lot of pressure to open up its agricultural market. And as you know way better than I, that's not something any Indian prime minister would likely agree to. I mean, the price of onions, can cause political ructions on the streets of India. So I can't predict to you what the nature of this inverted commas deal will look like, but I suspect there will be one.
So, going back to this whole rationale of these tariffs and the deals, was that Trump feels that the global trading system, and China in particular, has been, in his words, ripping America off. So I thought the idea of the tariffs was to make sure that countries that are friendly to America are less dependent on China, and that America is less dependent on China and Chinese goods. But here, on the contrary, you have some kind of an interim arrangement with the Chinese. That's one of the few things he has going. And with all the friendly countries, Japan, South Korea, they're paying 25% tariffs, and it's not gone down well with these American ally countries. So the very rationale of imposing these tariffs in the first place, if at all there was one for this tariff policy, seems to be completely upended.
Yes, and you've got, countries that are traditionally and understandably very nervous of and hostile in some respects to China, like Japan, like South Korea, and I guess now Indonesia, moving closer to China here. So it's very hard to discern geostrategic logic in Trump's trade war. I don't think he sees this as a geostrategic issue. He sees this as anybody who's got a trade surplus with the United States is ripping us off. And my job is just to use the enormous leverage of access to the American market, to the vast American middle class, as a lever to drive those deficits down and get other deals. I mean, you should remember always with Donald Trump that the private and the public are mixed up, and that there are lots of sort of family business deals. And, if you look at the recent agreements in the Gulf, crypto deals going on here, and indeed, potentially there with Pakistan. So it's a mistake that we all fall for, to look for public rationales alone to explain or forecast Trump's behavior. He has a family business that's making a lot of money.
I do want to talk about India and Pakistan and the ceasefire that was brought about on the 10th of May after that 4-day war between India and Pakistan. Trump has been claiming, I think ad nauseum now, more than a dozen times at least, last I counted, that he was the one who enforced the ceasefire between India and Pakistan. The Indian government has firmly rejected that, saying it was actually a bilateral arrangement. Why do you think he's repeating that, to the point where the government of India is publicly rebuking that and saying that that's not the case? Is it just that he's trying to take political credit for it, or what's going on there?
So he likes to claim credit for stuff, I mean, he thinks of himself as the great deal maker. And so, this is low-hanging fruit. Well, India and Pakistan de-escalated, and I sent Rubio, well, not sent him, but Rubio was on the phone, and therefore it was me. I mean, I don't think it's that much more complicated. And I think, it's interesting to see Prime Minister Modi and Jaishankar. They have contradicted Trump's account, but they've done so quite politely. I mean, firmly, but politely. Again, this fruits to the volcano thing, is relevant. You don't want to get on the wrong side of him because anything can happen. So I think though, I mean, he's not learned that India's sort of red line here is there is no outside third party mediation
Yeah.
of the Kashmir dispute. I don't think he understands that because he keeps offering to mediate. So you might have to gird yourselves for more of this.
The other concern, and I think this is a more longer term, more strategic concern here in India, has been the sort of rehyphenation between India and Pakistan. For a long time, there was this dehyphenation, and even in U.S. Presidencies, I think from George Bush's time onwards, Obama, and even during Trump's first term, and certainly during Biden's term, the whole American approach to India was, look, if there has to be a counterweight to China in the Indo-Pacific, that's why you had the Quad and all of that. So India had moved out of that league of being hyphenated with Pakistan. Somehow in the Trump second term, and because of these events, because of Operation Sindoor and the war with Pakistan, there's a degree of concern that Trump doesn't quite see India as the counterweight to China. He's happy rehyphenating India with Pakistan.
Yes. So, I mean, one of the puzzles about Trump's first 6 months is we still don't know what his position is geopolitically on China. We really don't know where he stands on Taiwan, for example. Washington is a pretty hawkish town vis-a-vis China, and that's bipartisan. It's a rare bipartisan stance. Not clear what Trump's actual view is. He's quite transactional. He's been complaining a lot about Taiwan. So therefore, the natural role India has played through successive administrations this century, really since Clinton onwards, isn't necessarily one that Trump has in his mind. I think he admires Modi. I think he envies some of Prime Minister Modi's power and sort of control over Indian politics. But at the same time, there are some quite opportunistic family sort of level business offers coming out of Pakistan. And that always sort of brings up dollar signs in Trump's eyes. So, I have a colleague who says on the trade front, we know nothing. Nobody knows anything, sorry, is his phrase. And it's kind of meant to underline that Trump's unpredictable. The deals you wouldn't have imagined that are on the private side can upend public policy. Be prepared to be surprised on this, on India-Pakistan with Trump.
Okay. And I also want to ask you a question about your latest book that's just come out, The Life of Zbigniew Brzezinski, America's Great Power Prophet. Of course, he was a great strategic visionary. He sort of helped shape American foreign policy during much of the Cold War times. You compared that to what you have now, where I guess there isn't much of a policy. It's like Trump wakes up every morning and decides, okay, this is today my policy. What does that do to America's standing in the world, to the degree of trust that has been built over many decades now, particularly with America's allies and friends? How do you see that playing itself out?
Thank you for mentioning this biography. This big Brzezinski, he was Henry Kissinger's great rival and frenemy, really, during the Cold War. But one thing that did unite them, or any other great strategic thinker, Sun Tzu, or I don't know, Cortilla, von Clausewitz, is that you understand your adversaries. You speak their language. You sort of eat and breathe the way they do. So it's the better to anticipate their moves and to prevent conflict. And so that sort of thing that unites all great strategists is, I think, missing at the moment in Washington. I think you would describe it as kind of astrategic. There is no real demand for big strategic thought. And I'm not just confining these remarks to the Trump administration. There's not much curiosity about the rest of the world and what the rest of the world wants. There is just appetite to extract more from the rest of the world. And I mean, I would call that astrategic, but others might see that astrategic as a posh way of saying not very clever.
All right, Mr. Edward Luce, thank you very much for this fascinating conversation, and good luck with your new book. Thank you.
Thank you.